Well, hello. You're probably wondering who I am, and maybe why I'm dressed this way. Well, let me tell you, I'm a soldier. Well, not really. Kind of. I'm a farmer, really. That's what I do. I plant crops and I raise them and I harvest crops. Well, at least I'm supposed to harvest crops. I'm supposed to plant crops. For the last 7 years, ever since the death of our judge Deborah in Israel, the Midianites and the Amalekites and other people from the east, they come in and they raid our land. Every crop that we plant in the open field, they destroy, they take for themselves. They come and they camp, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of them. And they camp and they set up their tents and they take whatever they want. And they kill our sheep and they kill our cattle and they kill our goats and anything that's there they kill. And what they don't take they burn and they ravage the land and we're left with nothing. They've been doing this for 7 years. We've been living in caves. We've been living in crevices in the rocks. We go up in the mountains and we try to plant little patches of grain here and there so we can live during the year. But it's a terrible way to live. And we don't have much. And we've been impoverished. These past 7 years, we're at the end of our rope. There's nowhere else to go. And it was then that we cried out to God. We cried out to Jehovah and said, help us. Because we have nothing. Help us. And really that's how I ended up in the army. Because God called a man named Jerubbaal. God set up Jerubbaal as a judge in Israel, as a redeemer, as one who would deliver us from the Midianites. I don't know if you know about Jerubbaal, but Jerubbaal, he went and one night broke down the altar of Baal. He crushed it, destroyed it. And not only that, but there's the wooden image, the idol of the Asherah pole. And he cut down the Asherah pole and he burned it. He used it for wood because he set up an altar to Jehovah on top of where the other altar of Baal was. And he took his father's bull, the prize bull, and he slaughtered the bull and he set it up as a sacrifice and he sacrificed it to Jehovah. As you can imagine, the whole town was angry. I mean, we were kind of scared because we woke up and we came to sacrifice on the altar of Baal and it wasn't there. And the Asherah pole wasn't there. It had been torn apart, it had been desecrated, it had been burned. And in its place was an altar to Jehovah. We were angry. We wanted to kill whoever had done this. And we discovered it was a man named Gideon. Gideon destroyed it. And we asked what he was doing, and he said he destroyed the altar and set up one to Jehovah because Jehovah God had called him to lead Israel into battle against the Amalekites. So we called him Jerubbaal. He contended with Baal. Let Baal deal with him. But you know something? Baal never did a thing. Baal didn't even touch Gideon. And so we knew that Gideon was called by the true God. And we knew that Jehovah was the true God. And so when Gideon sounded the trumpet, when Gideon sent messengers all throughout the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim, or Zebulun and Naphtali and Asher, we came. We came and it was exciting. Oh, I wish you were there. It was exciting to see. People kept streaming in and coming in droves and waves. We hadn't seen that many people in... Oh, I can't tell you how long. 32,000 men came to this army, and I was one of them. 32,000. It was exciting to see. People came, and the markets were full, and there was excitement, and there was joy, and there was happiness, and they were setting up their tents, and we were setting up the army, and we were excited. We were confident about what we could do, because we were following Gideon. We were following the man who contended with Baal and won. We were following the man who God had chose for us. And we knew that we could win, because we were confident in what we could do. And so one evening we set off marching. And it was a great time marching. Something we hadn't done for a long time is we started singing songs. We sang songs that we learned as kids. We sang songs as we learned when we were little, and our grandparents taught us these songs. And we sang them in our families, and we began singing those songs. And we had a great time marching. We marched in nighttime because it was cooler. And not only was it cooler, but if you were going to make a military move and you didn't want someone knowing, you went at night. And we made up songs. And we even made up songs about Gideon as we marched. We are following Gideon. We're going to beat the Midianites. Well, it didn't sound quite as good as it was back then, but it was great. We were marching. We were singing. We were excited. And by the time we got to our camp, it was almost light. We marched towards the valley of Jezreel. The valley of Jezreel was a beautiful valley. You can see it behind me. And we camped on one side of the valley of Jezreel. Mount Gilboa is where we camped. And up there, we set up our camp. And we began to set up tents and arrange our campfires and just get everything in order. And as we were finishing up, the sun began to rise, and we looked across the valley. The valley is about 5 miles across. It's a beautiful, lush valley. It's where we planted our crops. It's where we lived. It's where we, it was home for us. But it was going to be a battlefield next. And we looked across the valley of Jezreel. We looked to the hill of Moreh, which is where the Midianites and the Amalekites and the other people from the east, over that way. I'm bad at directions. And they were over there. And there were, too many to count. As we looked over there to the hill, we saw them moving around. And we saw their tents. And we saw the sun sparkling off of their swords. And it looked like the stars shining in the night sky. There were so many of them. We could see their camels. We could see their livestock. They were all milling around. We could see the soldiers going in and out of their tents and all the activity around the campfires. And it looked like, maybe you know it, it looked like an anthill. And maybe you've had the experience, there's an anthill and you see the ants, and when you were a kid you went and you kicked that anthill. And all the ants came scurrying out all over, and it was just a whole massive activity. That's what it looked like over there. It was a little bit sobering. Because we were 32,000 men. Our scouts came back and they told us over in the Midianite camp and Amalekites, there were 132,000 soldiers. 132,000. We were 35,000. We weren't... How would you feel? You're 35,000. The odds are 4-1. That means in order to win, we've got to kill 4 men. Each one of us, in order to survive. 4-1. I guess, we got talking, and I guess that wasn't too bad. After all, we had some really good fighting men with us. We had the men from Gilead. The men from Gilead were renowned fighters. I mean, surely they would go up in front and they would probably when the men of Gilead started, the other army would flee, because the men of Gilead, they were men. They knew how to fight. And we were following Gideon. We were following Jerubbaal. We were following the guy who contended with Baal and won. We were following the guy who God called to follow. So we were still confident about winning this. Well, we spent a couple of days just kind of getting ready, and I wondered when this battle would take place and what it was going to be like. And I was ready for Gideon to get up on the rock and address us, all 32,000 of us, and tell us how this thing was going to go down. What was the plan? What was the battle plan? Secretly, I had hoped that I was going to be one of the men that snuck around the Midianite camp and attacked from behind. Because, I mean, that just made sense. We should surround them. We should ambush them from behind. So Gideon got up on that rock, and he told everybody to be quiet, and we all listened. And Gideon said some pretty surprising words. Some pretty strange battle strategy. Gideon told us, he said, if anyone trembles with fear, he can go home. What? If anyone trembles with fear, if anyone is afraid, they can go home? Who's not afraid? Who's not afraid of going into battle against a greater army? Odds are 4-1. We're farmers. We're not trained soldiers. What are you talking about? If you're afraid, you can go home. To bring us to the spring of Harod, which was called the place of trembling, and to say if anybody trembles, they can go home? That was crazy. That was ridiculous. That was just plain old, well, in my opinion, dumb. And you know what happened? Something even wilder. Of the 32,000 of us that were there, 22,000 went home. 22,000 left. I sat there. I couldn't believe what was happening. Many of them that left were my friends. An endless stream of men leaving, saying, hey, we're out of here. If that's our way out and I don't have to die, I'm leaving. 22,000 of them. Many of them were my friends. A couple of them were my brothers. My own brothers left. So I was alone in my tent. Where I had a full tent before, now there were only 10,000 of us. And we weren't all that sure about what was going on anymore. Now the odds were not 4-1, but the odds were 14-1. I mean, that was just impossible. I mean, I'm not a soldier. I'm a farmer. I signed up. I said I would come because God called Gideon, because there were 32,000 of us, and we were confident what we could do. But there was no confidence that night. We sat around the campfires. Nobody was really interested in singing anymore, certainly. There wasn't too much excitement left. There was just fear. Wonderment of what in the world's going to happen, and is this real? Did we just hear this? Did this just happen? And so we sat around the campfires, 10,000 of us. And again, I wish you were there. Because something happened that night. Something took place that evening in Israel that hadn't taken place for a very, very long time. Because somebody started praying. And not praying to Baal, not praying to Asherah, but praying to Jehovah. Praying to the true God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of Israel. And he began praying out loud. And then a couple others joined in. And then more joined in. And then every man around the campfire was praying to God. 10,000 men praying out loud to Jehovah. I'll never forget that evening. I'll never forget the sound of 10,000 men praying out loud to the one true God. And we prayed. And we asked God to help us. We asked God to deliver us. We prayed for Gideon. We prayed for ourselves. We prayed for a victory. We prayed for God's protection. We prayed, God, show up, because we can't do this. And after we prayed, we went back to our tents and slept. And you know, we were confident again. We were confident in what we could do with God's help. Because we knew that God had heard us, and we knew that God would help us, so we were confident again what we could do with God's help. And so it was better around the morning fire, cooking our breakfast and our lunch, and we felt better about life. And Gideon once again came, and Gideon stood up on that rock. And I thought, okay, here it is. Here's the battle plan. Here's what's going to happen. There's only 10,000 of us now, but that's okay. We have God on our side. And Gideon's still called by God. And so the plan would be a better plan than it was before. And I still wanted to be part of the group that snuck around behind. I still wanted to do that. And so Gideon stood up on the rock and he told us to be quiet. And Gideon said some more surprising words. Gideon said, okay, here's what I want you to do. See the stream over there? Yeah. I want everybody to go take a drink from the stream. What? We're supposed to take a drink from the stream? Like, that doesn't make sense. I guess maybe he wants us hydrated for battle or something? I don't know. So we all lined up to take a drink. Now you got to understand, this was a small stream. This wasn't a big river. And there wasn't a lot of space. 10,000 men had to take a drink from this small stream. This took hours and hours to do. It wasn't that everybody lined up at once. And so when we went down to take a drink in the stream, only a few of us at a time, Gideon was there. And Gideon was watching us. And we'd take a drink from the stream and we'd get up and we'd walk, and Gideon would say, okay, you go over there, you go over there, you go over there. And so he was separating us into two groups. And there's a lot of people on the one group. And there were very few on the other group. In fact, by the time we were done, there were 300 men in the small group. And there were 9,700 in the large group. And I thought that was pretty curious. I was one of the 300. And it's interesting because I thought, oh, I must be one of the commanders. I felt pretty good about myself because I thought I must be one of the commanders of the army because there were 300 of us, so I would probably have a battalion of a couple hundred men or more, and I would be the one in charge. That was great. I felt pretty good about myself. And so Gideon got back up on that rock and he addressed all of us, and he turned to the large group, the 9,700. And he turned to the group, and I thought, okay, he's going to say, all right, you've got 300 commanders, divide yourselves up, here's the way we're going to do it. But he turned to the 9,700 men, and he said to them, now get this, he said to them, you guys, you go home. We don't need you. What? You guys go home? We don't need you? Gideon, are you out of your mind? We don't need 9,000. You think 300 of us is going to be good enough to go against 135,000? I don't think so. Like, what's he doing? He sent 9,700 men away. He sent them away. He said, we don't need you. So there I was once again. I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't move. I don't know why I didn't go the first time. Like, maybe I was just too dumb to go. Maybe I was just too proud to go. Maybe I was just too curious to go. But I kind of wished I'd left when I could have had the chance. And now he sends 9,700 away. And I watched them go. I watched every one of them go. 9,700. There's 300 of us left. Every one of my friends left. Even my older brother left. And there's 300 of us. The odds now were 450 to 1. 450 to... Are those odds that you would go to battle with? Are those odds that you would want? Are those odds that you would say, oh, hey, 451, I'm good with that? Of course not. I mean, look, to fight for my country is one thing. And when we had 32,000 men, and I was willing to do it when we had 22,000. But 300? That was just plain old suicide. I mean, that was stupid. What in the world is Gideon doing? What kind of a leader is Gideon? What kind of a God is Jehovah to say this thing? Like, it didn't make sense to me. And again, during the sitting around the campfire, I mean, sure, we prayed again, but there's 300 of us. What is 300 going to do against 135,000? I mean, that's the definition of impossible. That's just ridiculous. There's just no way. Apparently, Gideon felt the same way. Because as we were sitting around the fire, we saw Gideon take his servant, and they snuck out of camp. Great. Great, even our leaders left us. Well, I guess in the morning we'll pack up and go home. There's no point. And so we just sat there dejected. A little while later, though, Gideon comes back. And Gideon's not walking with his head hanging down. He's not walking with his shoulders stooped. Gideon's kind of skipping along. Gideon looks happy. Gideon looks joyful. Gideon looks confident. And so he came up to us and he gathered us around, and there's 300 left of us, and he gathered us around. He said, guys, you got to know what just took place. Okay, better be good. I mean, something's got to be good today. And so he said, I snuck into the Midianite camp. That was pretty courageous. I'm impressed. He snuck into the Gideonite camp, and he listened to a group of soldiers that were sitting around their fire. And one of the soldiers said, I had this weird dream, man. And in this dream, there's a big barley loaf, like this biggest barley loaf you've ever seen. And it came tumbling down the hill and rolling down the hill and picking up speed. And that barley loaf ran right over our tents. Well, that's an interesting dream. And the guys around that said, what did that mean? And the soldier of the Amalekites said, that can only be a sign of Gideon and Gideon's army defeating us. Wow. And that's what Gideon told us. That's what Gideon heard. God gave Gideon a sign to say, you are going to win this battle. And so Gideon said, all right, we're not going to wait for morning. We're going to attack him at night. Here's the plan. And so he said, everyone grab a jar. Everyone grab a jar? Like, what are you talking about? But whatever, so we took a jar. We emptied the water out of the jar. He didn't want any water. I thought maybe we're going to grab a jar of water, but we emptied all those jars out. It was just an empty jar. He said, here's a trumpet. So we all got a trumpet. And he said, and now take a torch. So we all got a torch. And I couldn't figure out what are we doing with a trumpet, a torch, and a jar. But he said, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. 300 of us are going to sneak up there. Oh, I like the sneaking part. And we were going to sneak around the camp, and we're going to encircle the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the other people that were with them. And we're going to circle around them. And on my signal, Gideon said, well, first we're going to hide our torches. We're going to put the jars over our torches so that they can't see the torchlight when we're sneaking up. And when we're all in place, what you're going to do is you're going to break your jar. You're going to hold your torch up. You're going to blow your trumpet as loud as you can blow your trumpet. And you're going to yell, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. A sword for the Lord and for Gideon. And when they hear that voice, when they heard our voices, 300 of us yelling as loud as we could, breaking those jars, blowing the trumpets, waving our torches around, they jumped out of their tents. They were asleep. They heard the noise. They woke up with a start. They grabbed their swords. And the Midianites began attacking the Amalekites. And the Amalekites began attacking the other people of the east that were with them. And the other people from the east turned against the Midianites. And they all started attacking and killing each other. And all we did was keep blowing our trumpets and waving our torches and yelling a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. And they were killing each other off. And then when they had when some of them started running away. And they started leaving. And so we started running down the hill after them through the valley. And we attacked every one of them and killed every single one of them. 135,000 of them. The odds were 450 to 1. And we had nothing but jars and trumpets and torches and farmers. We didn't even have the strong men from Gilead. But we had God. Actually, let me put it a different way. God had us. You see, we started out being confident in what we could do in our strength. And then when there were 22,000 left, there were 10,000 remaining. We were confident in what we could do in our strength with God's help. But when there was 300 of us, we learned this, that it's not about what we can do with God. It's not about our strength using God's help. We learned that it's not us using God. It's God using us. The battle was God's, not ours. It wasn't us saying, God, we're going to use you as some way to gain victory. God said, no, it doesn't work that way. But I'm going to use you. It's not about what we can do for God. It's about what God can do for us. Maybe you're in a battle of some sort. Maybe the odds are pretty great. Maybe they're 450 to 1. Maybe they're 14 to 1. Maybe they're 4 to 1. I don't know. But I need to tell you, it's not about what you can do, even with God. It's about what God can do when you're given over to Him. It's not about your strength. It's about the power and might of our God. So don't go in your own power. Don't use God. Let God do something through you. Thank you for joining us this morning. May you know God in greater and greater ways. May you know Him not as someone who you can use, someone who can be on your side for your purposes, but may you know God as God, who wants to use you, who will be with you, whose power and His might wins our victories and not our own. And so now I close with 2 Corinthians 13:14. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all.